Figure it out.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Charno, and this is Bad Movie Theatre. My mission to review some of the worst films ever made, not only for your enjoyment, but also for my personal pleasure. It is my sincerest hope that you won't need to have seen today's film. But if you have, you will better understand me to my fullest. Furthermore, I feel that all bad movies have a moment that is so horrific that the movie can never come back. This is known as the moment in which the film goes full retard. This is so significant that I have no choice but to point it out to you. So, without further ado, I present to you today's episode.
2012. Here we have yet another typical disaster movie from director Roland Emmerich. Here is a basic synopsis of events. A small group of people become privy to information regarding an impending doom of sorts. All warnings are either ignored or are useless, and the doom strikes. After numerous visual effects of cities being damaged, the main characters recover and come up with a plan to survive the situation. They take it on in some way. For a time it seems like they're at the lowest of moments, and defeat is inevitable. But then suddenly something essentially impossible happens and they prevail, and despite all of the death and destruction around them, they rejoice in an overzealous manner. Actually, which of these Roland Emmerich movies am I talking about? I'm not even sure anymore. Okay, more specifically, this film attempts to tackle the fear some people have about the destruction of the world occurring in 2012 due to the end of the Mayan calendar. Before we get into this, I'm going to just say that the scientific flaws with this movie are mind-boggling. I can't go into each one, I will be here for far too long. Anyway, the film begins with a shot of the solar system and contains ominous music. Based on what we later learn, it's meant to suggest the sun is the villain of sorts in the film. As we can see, the planets are sitting there peacefully and the sun starts to get violent and abusive. It's going to pounce on an unsuspecting planet. Our misfortune that for no reason at all, it chose Earth. Then we see one of our two protagonists, and he's riding around in India.
I made that fish curry you love!
I can't wait!
He meets up with his friend in a fictional mine that, were it real, would be the world's third deepest. As far as I can tell, there were only two reasons for this to be in India. One, because this character has to warn this character about a tidal wave that will strike near where the film concludes. Secondly, all of the deepest mines in the world are in South Africa, which we learn at the end of the movie survives basically unharmed. So, they get into a mine shaft elevator to go down 11,000 feet, which is over 2 miles. It equates to nearly 6.3 Sears Towers. They reach the bottom in just under 15 seconds. Do the math. You would have to exceed just over 500 miles per hour, the same speed most jet liners fly at. Proof is a real-time conversation they have in which you see them descend and reach their destination.
How deep do we need to go?
11,000 feet. I searched all over India for this thing. Used to be the deepest copper mine in the world.
Anyway, they get down there and give us a lame duck explanation for why everything about to occur in the movie is to happen.
The neutrinos are causing a physical reaction.
That's impossible.
At least they didn't invent some new particle.
It looks like the neutrinos coming from the sun have mutated into a new kind of nuclear particle.
Oh, wait, never mind. Okay, so we are introduced to a bit of an anomaly. First, we don't know his position in the government, but we gather that he's important. So much so that he can easily arrange a meeting with the president.
Now you're gonna wish you took a shower.
Sir?
You're about to meet the president.
Second, he must also be a scientist, because after looking at a document that must contain nothing but scientific jargon for less than 3 seconds, he instantly understands the world is doomed. That or it said, the world is doomed, and he believed it without question. Third, as the movie progresses, we see he is somewhat of a force of comic relief, while additionally the only intelligent person in the movie. He is a driving force behind the survival of humanity. Yet, we're supposed to treat him like the antagonist, which is really confusing. And at the end, he turns into a complete jerk for no reason. But more about that later. So, we're introduced to the President of the United States, who seems to be based on President Obama. However, this was shot while President Bush was still in office. It's safe to assume that Roland Emmerich was pretty sure Obama was going to win the election in 2008. So he requests a private meeting with his heads of state. The Russian president requests his translator. Since no one else does, this means he's the only leader who doesn't speak English, which is kind of sad. But apparently his English is good enough to comprehend the American president telling him about a doomsday theory that even if he fully understood, would probably have difficulty believing. Side note, Later we see Oliver Platt's character have a fluent English conversation with him over the phone. In fact, we see him speak English at the end of the movie. So we're in China, or specifically Tibet, depending on if you're Chinese or the rest of the world. And the Chinese government is starting construction on however the G8 decided to handle the 2012 crisis, and disguises it as a dam construction project. Which, by the way, is a stupid cover-up because even poor, uneducated Chinese laborers are going to wonder why they're building a dam in the highest mountain range in the world where there are no major bodies of water. But whatever. So as time progresses, they collect money and artwork. Suddenly, we're in 2012 and we see the title at 12 minutes into the movie.
I saw what you did there.
And for the first time, we see a primary protagonist played by John Cusack, named Jackson Curtis, who's basically a bad father, an author, and a limo driver. That's about it.
Meryl, I told you! We have to move back to Wisconsin!
We're introduced to the rest of his family who basically don't like him. He's divorced and his kids like their stepfather better than him. So here we're introduced to the two most useless characters with the least valuable subplot in the entire film. This guy is the father of the secondary protagonist. His only purpose is to create some sort of emotional depth for Adrian, while this character has his own story that doesn't matter in the least. Basically, their boat gets knocked out by a tidal wave later. I will rarely discuss these characters as the movie goes on, but I assure you I will return to them later. For now, the only thing that is interesting to note about either of them is that this guy is apparently a racist. He hates his son for marrying a Japanese girl. Since he's too young for me to accept he fought in the Second World War and harbors old feelings, this means he's simply a racist, yet for some reason he pals around with a black guy. So they arrive at Yellowstone National Park at what appears, based on the shadows, to be shortly after 1 p.m. This would be fine except that they left that morning from Los Angeles, which is over 1,000 miles away, which would mean his car would have to drive faster than that elevator we saw earlier.
That's impossible.
We've
been following the schedule you established, Mr. Helmsley. And now you're telling me we have to throw it out?
Yes, sir. I was wrong.
So we're back with Jackson and he decides to take his kids hiking in Yellowstone and teaches them that it's okay to break the rules and ignore warning signs posted by the government. Great parenting. We're introduced to Woody Harrelson's character, who despite being insane is ironically the wise, sage-like character of the film. Very strange to have the voice of reason be completely and totally out of his mind.
This is wild.
Jackson gets picked up by the government, not a surprise. The two protagonists meet and we learn that Jackson is basically an unsuccessful author, and by an astonishing coincidence, Adrian is currently reading his book, which we find out later only sold 422 copies. The film advances and all they really let us know is that Yellowstone's supervolcano is destabilizing. Jackson then decides to hang out with Charlie Frost, who gives him all the information to set up the character's journey for the rest of the film.
He even sent me a map.
A map for what, Charlie? What's the map for?
They're building spaceships, man.
Naturally, Jackson doesn't believe him. So here, we're flat out told the end is coming on December 21st, 2012. Yet we know because they're all claiming it's happening too early and because of the London Olympics that this is the summer. As the movie goes on, we understand that the world comes apart the day after this scene, which means even the character who knew this was going to happen, as well as the Mayans, were wrong about when it would occur. We then see a scene with Gordon and Kate shopping. For no reason, the scene is meant to make us think Gordon is a jerk. What the scene also helps to establish is a timeline. They're clearly shopping in the evening. The next day, which we know based on the sunlight, we're with Jackson and his kids, and they're at Yellowstone watching a news report about an earthquake occurring in the very store Gordon and Kate were shopping at. Then they suddenly decide to leave early.
My friends, I recommend we evacuate immediately.
The boarding process goes into effect and we're introduced to Yuri Karpov, also known for the rest of this review as the Russian guy. He is currently in Las Vegas when he gets the message. He leaves instantly. We then find out that Jackson happens to be a limo driver for the Russian guy and is to pick up his sons and escort them to an airport.
Now you're laughing, Curtis, but we have tickets to go on a big ship. We will live and you will die.
Basically, Jackson just instantly switches his position on the situation so much so that he comes up with an escape plan. The insanity is overwhelming. Here is his plan.
Hey! Here, take this. This is a very expensive watch. My editor gave it to me when he thought I was going to be somebody.
Luckily, all of this happens and they get on their way without any real issues. So, Jackson and his entourage arrive in Yellowstone. Jackson searches for Charlie only to learn that Charlie is at the precipice of the volcano. Jackson searches for the map in Charlie's camper. When he can't find it, he decides to drive the camper to Charlie's location to inquire where it is. Once we see Charlie, we can't help but stop and think. He's there to report the exact moment the volcano erupts, right? Well, I established earlier that this is the summer. Charlie believes this won't happen for another 6 months on the winter solstice. He even asked for a donation earlier.
Of course we do appreciate donations.
If he thought for a second the Earth would die in like a day or two, I doubt he would care at this point about money. He even had a supply of pickles that would last him long enough to get to the winter. So, why is Charlie really out there? The only real explanation is that he goes out there every day and just hopes it'll occur at some point while he's out there. And today he happened to be right. So the supervolcano goes off. I'm not going into the practical science of it, but just know that this is absurd. Were the supervolcano in Yellowstone to go off, it would be a global killer. This movie treats it like a minor annoyance that follows the characters.
Daddy, it's following us! Daddy, we're on fire!
They escape because the ash cloud appears to just suddenly give up.
It's not possible.
I'm going to jump ahead and then fall back a little, but I need to bring this up now. Let's look at the map. Here is Yellowstone, here is Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Washington DC, and New York City. Charlie says this.
Giant ash cloud created by this super volcano will first envelop Vegas, and then St. Louis, and then Chicago, and then at long last, Washington D.C. will have its lights go out.
We also find out
The ash cloud will reach Washington in roughly 7 hours.
literally minutes after that, we learn that Vegas hasn't been hit yet. Okay, fine. But then a few minutes after that, we find out Pittsburgh has been hit.
I have also just learned that the vice president's chopper went down in the ash cloud outside of Pittsburgh.
How could that work? It must mean the ash cloud is shooting east far faster for some reason, and then suddenly slowed down at Pittsburgh and waited for Washington to clear out before hitting the rest of the eastern seaboard. That was nice of it. It will eventually hit Vegas, but not until after all of this, which just makes no sense. So here we are, the moment when the film goes full retard.
You went full retard, man.
I know, I thought we'd have hit it by now too. Basically, the President of the United States decides not to board the Ark. What is annoying about this is the fact that he believes his decision is somehow noble, when in fact, it's cowardly. Think about it. They need to ensure stability. Well, when you eliminate a calming figure like the President from view, you give the impression that things are going badly. This will only result in more chaos in the future. And even in the immediate situation, from this point on, there is an endless power struggle with all of the American characters. This unnecessary and pointless conflict only occurred because the President chose to be a coward for no reason, yet believed he was heroic. Anyway, we're back with Jackson and his crew, and they've made it to Vegas. Yet again, without needing to refuel on the way.
That's impossible!
So, we're then tipped off that the ash cloud is approaching Vegas, and that the Russian guy's plane is damaged. Then we learn by an astonishing coincidence that both Jackson and his entourage happen to be in the same place as the Russian guy he works for. Then, by an even more amazing coincidence, we learn that Gordon just happens to be the plastic surgeon for the Russian guy's girlfriend. Oh, it gets even worse. In comes Sasha, who says,
I found the Cyprian and Antonov. They were just about to take off, but the tower didn't let them.
This implies the crew of the plane arbitrarily listened to the tower despite impending doom and simply abandoned it.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life!
Shortly after that, we learn that this plane actually belongs to the Russian guy. Wait, what? He owned 2 planes and didn't, remember that? The way this is set up implies that Sasha accidentally found and stole the Russian guy's plane for the Russian guy. The idiocy is mind-boggling. The Russian guy's cars are on the plane. Not a coincidence. Anyway, yet again they escape nature and head to China. For a while now, there is a long lull in the plot that is meant to build up the emotional states of the characters. It doesn't work. All that really happens is that the cowardly president dies, and they come up with a basically absurd excuse to make water the ultimate threat.
The Earth's poles have reversed their magnetic fields.
I've been ignoring this, but no longer at this point can I hold my tongue. The odds of cell phones and global communications working after all this starts gets lower and lower, yet they seem to. But now, they know the Earth's magnetic poles have shifted. Our entire global communication system is based on the Earth's magnetic field being in its current state. The second it changes, nothing would work, including the equipment that told them that it changed its polarity in the first place. Anyway, Jackson and his crew are nearly out of fuel, which is funny because that never seemed to matter in the little Cessna. They realize they don't have enough to make it to China. Luckily for them, Earth shifted by 1,578 miles, so that puts them pretty much exactly where they needed to be.
That's impossible!
Don't start! Shut up, everybody! Engine. Start.
They escape in the Russian guy's car, and Sasha, the pilot, dies for no reason. The Chinese pick up the Russian guy, and then Jackson and everyone else are left to fend for themselves. Finally, we see the G8's plan, to build big boats.
Really?
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 Yes, really. All along, we're led to believe they're building spaceships. Which would, make sense. We have space stations. The technology exists. I could believe the money would go there. But this means anyone on a submarine could have lived, and possibly some people on a cruise ship. Hint, hint. So then the Indian guy makes a phone call, which is impossible for reasons previously explained.
It's impossible.
And warns of a tidal wave hitting India from the east. The same one that later hits the Arks. Basically, all that happens for a while is that our main characters find the Ark and everyone gets tense about an impending tidal wave. So in this scene, the smartest character becomes a jerk for no reason. He ordered the arcs to close, while the emotionally soft character, that is Adrian, pleads they open the doors back up. Ultimately, this wastes a lot of time when the concern is that they don't have enough time to let everyone in. We know they have 15 minutes when he starts his speech. We also later learn it only took 3 minutes for them to board. So yeah, they had time. In fact, if they hadn't stalled, odds are Jackson and his group wouldn't have accidentally screwed up the gears and everything would have been fine. By the way, this situation would have been avoided had the president chosen not to kill himself and had just been there to resolve this.
If my father were here, he would open the gates.
What an idiot!
Anyway, they open the gates and this results in a few things. First, they kill off Gordon, which is stupid. The only reason is so that Jackson and Kate can hook up guilt-free at the end. Seriously, this has no other purpose. Additionally, Jackson and the Chinese guy accidentally damage one of the gears. The ship takes on water, it breaks free from the supports and crashes into Mount Everest. Ultimately, they fix the problem and everyone is fine except for the Russian guy who dies by falling off the edge of the platform. And his girlfriend who died for no reason at all. The Arks survive and head to South Africa because apparently it never flooded. I'm serious. They actually say that.
And it likely never even flooded.
Then we also notice that the Arks seem to be protected by helicopters. Why? Who is going to attack them? Wouldn't fuel be extremely rare right now? Why would you just fly around? For show? The only logical theory I have is that they expect to encounter a bunch of Somalian pirates when they get to Africa, and they're going to have to destroy them before they can essentially conquer the only inhabitable continent left. This is where the movie ends. Earlier, I mentioned that I would return to discuss more about the useless old characters. Well, that time has come. Did you know that the original ending of this movie actually had them survive? Don't believe me? Watch.
We're coming to pick you guys up. How's Tony?
That's right, they survived this. By landing on a rock. And then they contact these giant boats on yet another cell phone. Amazing.
That's impossible!
Ignoring that deleted ending, this is how I think the movie would have played out had it gone on a little longer.
Captain, we've got a small Somalian pirate ship off the port bow.
Are you kidding me? I survived crashing into Everest. Some pirates on a speederboat aren't stopping me now.
Attention, African pirates.
This is Captain Michaels of the American Ark.
Captain, there's no response.
I'm sure that's because they don't have a way to contact us.
Can't contact us. Can't contact us. Once they can contact us, all we need is a cell phone. Captain, you've got to give the order to blow them out of the water right now.
I'm afraid he's right. We can't trust them.
Open fire on the boat.
Thus concludes today's episode of Bad Movie Theatre. Join us again next time. Thank you.